Hey everyone, I'm back for my next video. This is going to be my third short story based on A Man in a Beast World, a long lost human. Hope you enjoy. 27 years into the future, General Chloe Lynn reflects on the loss of Chris, the one person who helped her establish peace between the Anthros and humans. It's almost midnight. My husband is already in bed, and I should go to sleep too. I have to be ready for the big day tomorrow, after all. Tomorrow is my 59th birthday, and although they tried to keep it a secret from me, I know Alpha Squad has planned a huge celebration that will make us all live up to my organization, the United Federation. For the first time in almost 27 years, all my soldiers will be in the same place again, and even our families are coming over to celebrate with us. Mine are both in their mid-70s now, but they insisted on being there to see their oldest daughter turn 59, along with everyone's husbands, wives, children, and siblings. We expect at least hundreds of people since the UF is a big organization. But there is no sleep for me right now, not on moments like this, on moments when my mind can only focus on the one person who won't be there, who hasn't been to any social gathering for his whole life since he's a human. The only human soldier of the UF, Chris. So here I am, sitting in my living room, holding one of the very few pictures that are left of him. A picture from when Chris was 17 with Alpha Squad, the age he had when he vanished from our base and lives forever. Chris was in many ways unique. First of all, he was the only soldier throughout the entire UF that was human. When he first showed up, we immediately showed our disdain and disgust towards him just because he's just that, a human. Second was his loyalty. No matter how much we mistrusted him, he always worked hard to earn our respect, like the time he saved Laura from those grenades at Python's mansion, or he dropped the charges against Lupa even though she slit his throat. Third was his shady background. While my soldiers all had our own reasons for joining the United Federation, Chris was more of a wild card. He told me everything about his group, but I felt that wasn't good enough and he was hiding something. Mika thought so too. I remember when I told him about Cerberus, he looked like he was looking at a ghost, but I didn't pay much attention to it. However, on the mission where Lupa slit his throat, Laura told me how he went commando after she told him about the torture Mika went through at Cerberus's hand and how he said he forgot where he came from. Even though he was a part of the UF, Chris was treated like trash by the other soldiers. Not surprising, since many of them have suffered at the hands of other humans, especially Alpha Squad. I even made him wear a collar that has a poison switch set to kill him if he steps out of line. It also gives him a shock thanks to the control for it. Even though he was seeing most of Alpha Squad as his friends, he can barely catch a break in his sorry life thanks to the other soldiers, and this was before he joined us. The discrimination was starting to wear him out, especially since Python and his forces created a gas that turns humans into anthros. Somehow Chris didn't turn, but was left with some kind of cancer in his lungs that would kill him if we didn't find Dr. Reed, the scientist who created the gas, and have her cure him and turn the humans back to normal. Then in 2072, after months after Chris joined, Alpha Squad came back from a mission and they were pissed beyond belief. And that was when things went wrong. Seriously wrong. It still pains me to think about it. Short version, Alpha Squad found out that Chris was a member of Cerberus thanks to Jason Python's video message, and the girls felt betrayed by him. They went to his room, told him they found out everything, and hauled his ass to interrogation, where for the next several hours, the girls beat the living hell out of him while trying to get him to talk about Cerberus. They even went as far as stabbing him in non fatal areas. After that, he snapped and told us everything he knew, from being a Cerberus soldier at the age of 5 to how the Cerberus soldiers that violated Mika had red tattoos instead of white, to almost being raped by Roxy Drago at Ironjaw, to saving her from a butcher after the prison riot, to developing a cancer from that damn gas. At first, the girls seemed to believe him, but unfortunately they didn't. They mocked him, Laura and Adder saying they couldn't believe they had feelings for him. Sadly, the situation quickly got out of hand, and they quickly told the base that Chris was a Cerberus soldier. While I wanted Chris to take responsibility for his actions, this was going too far, but I decided not to help him. I even went as far as to cut him from Alpha Squad and only allowed him to go on missions until I say otherwise. Now I wish I had stood by his side. Alpha Squad told the whole base about Chris being a Cerberus agent, and pissed off was an understatement. After Chris decided to leave his room, he was spat on, harassed, and assaulted by any anthro he came across. He tried to explain himself, but no one would listen to him. Alex and Sasha, two anthros that he got along, while not at first but eventually did, refused to acknowledge him, with Sasha even threatening to kill him if he got close to them. They even destroyed his room multiple times, even though we fixed it right up every time. As time passed, he tried to get them to forgive him, but slowly he realized that he is all alone and that no one cares for him, not even the general, namely me. After 3 weeks, he changed. Depression turned to sadness, and sadness turned to rage, and finally, he snapped. He gave up on trying to scrape together what little trust they once had for him and decided to fight back. He stopped holding back and viciously attacks any soldier that tries to harm him. He even tries to fight back against his former friends if given the chance. Several times Yuki voiced her concerns, but we brushed them off. Now I wish that we listened to them then, and I hate myself for taking part in it all. Though not directly, but I should have helped him, but I didn't. We might have been able to prevent what happened at the end of those 3 weeks. That was when Mika and the others planned to enjoy a day off in the city before they raided another FIA prison. The evening before, Chris suddenly showed up in the briefing room, battered and bruised from fighting my soldiers. Mika, Ashley, and Amber immediately demanded he get the fuck out. Sorry, pardon my language. But this time, Chris refused. This has gone on long enough. I never got to choose how to live my life when it comes to Cerberus, and it's about time you believe me. I remember him saying, after which he practically begged if we could stop this nonsense. I recall me and Laura exchanging a look, but before we could speak, Amber had leaped forward, pushed Chris back to the door, and yelled at him. He had two options: either get the fuck out of here, pardon my language, or he would be crippled for the rest of his life. Chris gritted his teeth and his cheeks turned red, and for a moment I actually feared that he would get into a fight with Amber, especially since he's already beaten her before. But that didn't happen. Instead, Chris took a deep breath, turned towards us, and asked one last time if we could stop this and let him back into Alpha Squad. When I reluctantly said no, Chris picked himself up and walked to the door. On his way out, he turned around and spoke only 5 words. Good luck on your lives tomorrow. Nothing in Chris's voice indicated anything wrong, but the look in his eyes should have tipped us off. It was the look everyone had when they've given up on everyone and everything in life. Then he walked out of the room, slamming the door behind him. And for most of us, that was the last time we would ever see Chris, even though we didn't realize it then. Oh, hold on. There we go. The following morning, Alpha Squad left early in the morning for our city for their day off. Chris didn't show up for breakfast, and when Yuki tried to call him, we got no response. Ashley brushed it off as that Chris was just being a big baby, and he would have cooled off in the evening, so they left as planned. After enjoying their day off, they went to raid one of Python's prisons, and to say their mission was a disappointment would be an understatement. Granted, they got the job done, but they did so barely. During their time, they got into one too many close calls. Barely any coordination, and only succeeded thanks to the imprisoned humans helping them. While they were finishing up, they got another video message from General Python taunting them by saying his plan worked. They were confused at first, but they became horrified. More specifically, Laura, Adder, Yuki, and Lupa, when Python told them that the Cerberus that violated Mika and her girlfriend and were nothing but pretenders, and that the real Cerberus wanted to make peace with the Anthros by joining the UF, but he put a stop to that. After that, the girls realized they made a terrible mistake and made it back to base as quickly as possible to tell me about this. Once I found out, I quickly called for an assembly and told my soldiers that Chris was telling the truth. They were distraught that they tortured someone for something he had no control over whatsoever. The girls and I decided to wait until tomorrow to apologize to Chris since he's been through too much already. Though Amber mentioned something has been burning recently. Probably one of the other squads cooking something, but we would soon be proven wrong about that. The following morning, we all gathered outside Chris's room ready to apologize. I knocked on his door and called for his name, but just like yesterday evening, there was no response. Sorry, yesterday morning. Really slipped my notice. Anyway, when repeated knocking didn't help, they urged me to just open the door. But none of us were prepared for what we found, or in this case, didn't find. The room was empty. Completely empty. Not only was Chris not there, but the sleeping bag that he had to use since he no longer had a bed and what little remained of his personal belongings after my soldiers destroyed the majority of it was gone too. It was just like an extra room you see in those apartments. I still remember clearly the shock of seeing what used to be our friend's bedroom in this state, and I wasn't alone. All around me, I could hear Alpha Squad gasp in shock. Adder and Yuki even began to cry. Unsure of what to do, we went back into the hallway in a daze. Our daze was broken when we heard Lupa gasping in shock. We turned around and saw her still in Chris's room, looking at something. When we looked at what she was looking at, we saw a photo of Chris and the girls together as a group. It was taken a few months ago after Chris first showed up here. At first glance, nothing seemed wrong. But when we got closer, we saw what Lupa had noticed. But where Chris used to be was now a hole shaped like him. Chris had used a knife or scissors to carefully cut himself out of the picture. This, combined with the empty room next to us, was enough to cause panic. All of us fanatically started to search the whole base, fearing the worst. And our fears were confirmed. Laura asked everybody if they've seen Chris walk out of here, but they all said no. Yuki checked the cameras to see if there was any sign of him, but the footage from last night was gone. Adder checked the shooting range to see if he was there, but no. Amber went to the gym to see if Chris was underneath the ring, but no luck. Lupa, Mika, and Ashley checked the roof, basement, and outskirts of the base, but haven't come close to finding him. In short, any piece of evidence that Chris had ever lived in this base was gone. Amber inspected the backyard, still thinking about that burning smell from the night before. You know, because she's a dragon and they breathe fire, so it's kind of like their thing or whatever. Anyway, and she found the source. Just outside the base was a huge scorch mark and a pile of ash on the grass. And in the ash, Amber saw a bunch of stuff bundled together. Chris's stuff. Yuki, having heard Amber outside, quickly went through some of the ash ashes and confirmed our suspicions. The ash contained remains of Chris's stuff like his bed, clothes, heater, and everything else, and no trace of him. At this point, many of us were worried sick, with me close to fainting. That was when Ashley came to us with Lupa, Laura, Mika, and Adder in tow, carrying something in her hand. Yuki took it from her. It was a notebook, mostly burned up but with some pages still readable. It turned out to be a diary from Chris. None of us knew he even had one. As we read the pages that survived the fire, we suddenly got to see a whole different side of him. Our quote unquote favorite human, the highly trained Cerberus soldier, turned out to have been suffering from depression and feelings of insecurity for his whole life. What we did to him for the past 3 weeks might have been what finally pushed him over the edge. But it was just the tip of the iceberg overall. As it turned out, being the only human in the UF made him feel like an outcast, a genetic error. He did suffer feelings of inadequacy due to his background, not to mention the many times he suffered, like when he was molested by Roxy Drago in Ironjaw. There was also a page about the day he first showed up here. We put him through hell just because he was a human who had no choice on how to live his life. Seeing things from Chris's point of view made us realize how unfair we had treated him because of something out of his control. Me forcing him to wear that collar, Amber and then Sasha shocking him with it for no reason, Adder forcing him to wake Lupa up even though she had PTSD regarding humans, Mika verbally abusing him by telling him not to make an alliance with the UF and run away, watching his own kind turning into the very things they most despised, Amber kissing Laura in front of him to mock him and make him fall out of love with Laura, and most of all, us putting him through hell for 3 weeks because he was a Cerberus soldier, even though he didn't have a choice. Even after all these years, I can still quote the final page. This is it. I just gave Chloe and the others their last chance to accept me back in the army, so we can defeat the FIA and cure me of my affliction. And they refused. Guess they indeed finally realized what I myself have known for a while, that I'm a burden to everyone I come across, and they are all better off without me, just like they were before I showed up. Well, if I'm going to be evicted from this war, then it better be on my own terms. Tomorrow morning, after they leave for their mission, I will put Operation Obsolete into action. I don't even know why I'm writing this shit down, since I'm going to burn this book along with the rest of my past. Force of habit, I think. But it doesn't matter, because after tomorrow, I, Chris, will no longer exist. We searched all day long, but we couldn't find him. Hell, I'd even told the entire UF to search for Chris from top to bottom, and to search in the cities where we kept the humans we saved, but still nothing. We took a good look at the cameras that were strewn along the path that leads to the exit, and they were all covered with paint. I asked everyone if they heard anything suspicious from the night before Chris left, but they all said they heard nothing. That really surprised me since we Anthros have enhanced hearing, and the fact that a human snuck out of here without a peep was impressive, though I wish I could feel impressed by Chris now. That evening, we had all returned to base, still no step further to finding Chris. By this point, I was near a nervous breakdown, and Alpha Squad weren't doing much better. The next day, I decided to announce to the whole world about Chris's origin, from him being an anthro-human hybrid to being a member of Cerberus to being mistreated by the army. I found out about the first thing I said because Alpha Squad didn't finish the whole video and that he didn't turn into an anthro while my soldiers did their best to repair some of the damage Chris had caused, including refinishing his room and with some old furniture we bought at a store. I knew that by telling the whole world Chris is a hybrid, it would strengthen our chance for peace between both races, but would also weaken it since they'll find out about how we mistreated him. A double-edged sword, if you prefer. It was a gamble, and I took it. Over the next several months, we, the United Federation, did everything we could to defeat the FIA for good, save all the humans, turn them back to normal, and bring Chris back. And we mostly succeeded. We destroyed every FIA base we came across, liberated every prison we found, and saved every human we possibly could. Granted, there were many casualties on many sides, but it was worth it because after months of trying, we found General Python and what's left of his forces and took them down. Almost every soldier the FIA hired was dead, even Python himself, thanks to Lara and Mika. Those who survived will be spending the rest of their lives in prison. Roxy Drago, who almost raped Chris, was almost killed by Mika and Lara, but pleaded to spare her life because Chris would have done the same thing when she was tied by that butcher, but he saved her instead. I reluctantly agreed to spare her life and even asked her to help us find him, much to everyone's surprise and disagreement. Riley, who had issues with Chris since they first met, was let off with a light sentence, and she only did this because she doesn't want anything to happen to her mother. In fact, she even helped us try to find Chris. However, despite our hard work and success in putting an end to the war for good, we haven't come close to finding Chris. I was scared because there's a chance he could be dead, but I quickly dismissed those thoughts because those same thoughts are what led to him leaving in the first place. All we can do now is hope and pray. As time passed, the UF started to stop searching for Chris, though I told them to keep searching. However, they argue that since the war is over, they can all go back home to their friends and families. As much as I hate to say, they were right. Everyone can go home, so I told everyone, especially Alpha Squad, that they can all go back home, much to the latter's arguing. Just as when they were about to leave, I told Alpha Squad to keep searching for Chris, and once they find him, report to me, much to their excitement. What I didn't know is that I would barely hear from them for a long time. 2073 came and still no sign from Chris. So slowly, Alpha Squad and I managed to pick ourselves up, especially Lupa. After the war, they went to live their lives and attend great universities and meet nice people. I, on the other hand, decided to retire so I can teach the next generation. Amber and Laura have a shaky relationship. After finding out the former took advantage of her feelings and Chris's, Laura got into a huge fight with Amber, which ended with Laura breaking up and disowning her. After a few years and a tearful apology from Amber, Laura forgave Amber and got back together, on the condition that they share Chris together, much to the dragon's disgust, but she agreed. Yuki, after being depressed for several years, got her life together and attended a university where she received a bachelor's degree in IT. Since she's the technician of the group. Afterwards, she met someone, and after months of dating, they got married. After 2 years, she filed for divorce because deep down in her heart of hearts, she loves Chris, and she hopes that once we find him, she she can confess her love for him. Ashley decided not to attend a university and decided to get a job as a shooting instructor. After a while, she met someone. After months of dating, they decided to get engaged. They're expecting a baby soon. As far as she's concerned about Chris, she hopes she can apologize for all the crap we put him through. Adder, after spending years being disgusted by herself, decided to grow up, attend a college, and get a degree in kinesiology and gunsmithing. Since she's an awesome sniper. 2 years after graduating, she got married with a man, but filed for divorce months later after he had an affair with a woman. Afterwards, she prayed, hoping Chris will be found and she can confess to him. Mika had it rough. She felt like she disowned her late girlfriend, Isabella, especially after finding out the Cerberus group that raped them both wasn't the real deal. After being depressed for months, She helped me try to find Chris while helping any humans who were being discriminated against along the way. After some time, she decided to hook up with a human woman who reminded her of Isabella, much to everyone's surprise. They got engaged, and after a year of dating, managed to adopt a human child as their offspring. She hopes to find Chris and beg for forgiveness after everything she did to him and that they could be friends. Out of everyone, Lupa had it worse. After everything she did to him, before and after finding out he was an ex Cerberus soldier, she was out of it. She cried nonstop for months, pleading Chris to forgive her, even though he wasn't there. And when she didn't hear a response, she felt that Chris doesn't want to forgive her. Afterwards, she almost committed the worst mistake of her life. One day, when Laura went to visit her, she saw Lupa trying to kill herself. Luckily, Laura stopped her in time. Lupa asked why, and Laura told her that Chris would be upset if he found out she killed herself, especially since he saved her from being locked up after she slit his throat. Laura made her feel better by sleeping with her. Not like that, but like as someone would do to comfort another, like when you have a nightmare. Afterwards, Lupa did everything she could to find Chris so she could apologize in hopes he accepts her feelings for him. 2079. After 7 years, on the day he would turn 24, Chris was declared legally dead, and his case became a cold one. Another big blow to us. What little hope we had left to see him again and someday was instantly crushed, but we still couldn't bring ourselves to fully give up. Miracles could happen after all, so we still kept the memory of Chris alive, not just for ourselves, but even more for the next generations of humans, anthros, and hybrids. By doing so, we'll inspire them to keep up the fight and not be ashamed for who and what they are. In May of 2089, we finally created a cure that will turn the anthros that were once humans back to normal. I told Alpha Squad this, and they were excited, especially since they knew Chris would show up, because he was still messed up from inhaling that gas back in Ironjaw all those years ago. They distributed the cure to everyone and watched as they all turned back to normal, looking out for Chris, as since he's the only one that didn't turn. After everyone was normal, they all left. As we watched them leave, we were slowly getting sad because we didn't see Chris, thinking he didn't show up. However, we saw one last person leave. We noticed he was dressed in a lot of clothing. As he walked past us, we locked eyes for only a split second, but we could have sworn his eyes were purple, just like Chris's after he inhaled that gas. At first, I thought he was there, but I decided my eyes were playing tricks on me, saying that his eyes shouldn't be purple anymore after taking the cure. How wrong I was afterwards. Then in May of 2094, on the 5th anniversary, the humans were cured. It happened. We finally found Chris, if only entirely by chance. I had come to the city for a couple of days to visit Laura and the others, and together we went to this memorial plaque containing the names of the innocent humans who were tortured and killed by the FIA after we gave them to Python. It made me sick to my stomach just thinking about how I'm responsible for this. When we arrived, we noticed someone else kneeling at the plaque. A man in his late 30s with black hair. As we approached the grave, he got up and left. He walked past us, our eyes met for maybe 2 seconds, but at that moment, I knew it. It was Chris, older, and he no doubt had gotten himself one of those new perma dye jobs to change his hair color, but it was him because of the purple eyes. I was too stunned to say anything at that moment while the man left the memorial plaque and got into one of those self-driving taxi cabs. After maybe 25 minutes, when I was walking back to the girls, I told Yuki. She was skeptical, of course, but when I pressed the matter, she decided to look into it on her laptop. It didn't take her long. With all those electronic devices everybody has these days, combined with Yuki's technical skills and my many connections with the government, she learned that the man we just saw was named Tyler Johnson. I urged Yuki to search a little further because this may be our last chance to finally find Chris. And as she typed away on the holographic interface of her laptop, I could see her so I could see her normally so stoic face. As she was shy at first, but after Chris left, she changed. That's why she was barely emotional. In the story, I mean. Slowly became a frown, and then a worried look. According to the information she found, Tyler had been adopted by the Carvers when he was 18. Around the same time, Chris disappeared, especially since his birthday was coming up at the time. That was too much coincidence for my liking, and the girls agreed. But we had to act fast. If the man we saw was indeed Chris, and he had recognized us too, he probably wouldn't stay here for long. We quickly got back to our car while Yuki looked up records of all motels in the city. Finally, she found one with a room registered to Tyler Johnson. I can't describe how nervous I was. Good thing cars can drive themselves now because I don't think I would have been able to drive myself at that point, as well as the others. While making our way to the hotel, Yuki installed a new face recognition app on my phone, along with a new photo of Chris, the same one from the group photo I got when I made a copy. Luckily, he didn't tamper with it. It should give us the definitive answer. It was already getting dark and when we arrived, but before we did, we picked up Roxy, Riley, Alex, and Sasha because they wanted to apologize to Chris for what they did. We parked at the far end of the parking lot. I opted for the girls to stay behind in the car and keep an eye out on things with Yuki's laptop, while I would confront Chris, but they didn't. He wanted to apologize together. We waited for half an hour, then we saw him leave his motel room and walk to his own car. I took a deep breath, activated the recording function on my phone, and walked across the parking lot. Chris! His back was turned to me, but I could tell he gasped, because I heard it. Must have been a long time since any of us called you by your real name, right? I asked. So, aren't you going to greet your old friends, or what? He turned around, his mouth still partly open. Enough for me to see those same purple eyes again. Miss Lynn, you are mistaken. My name is Tyler Johnson, and I don't know any Chris, nor do I have any friends. I learned a long time ago learning you can't trust friends. Plus those four or extra anthros don't mean anything to me. But the moment he turned around, Yuki snapped his picture and pressed the compare button on the app. It was a match. She showed him the screen with both photos next to each other. It is you, Chris, so please, drop the act. Damn it. He tried to keep his voice low, but we heard it anyway. Then he sighed. All right, I may have been Chris in the past, but that time is over. So why would it matter now? Why would it matter? I tried to stay calm, but it was taking all my self-control to do so. All the all the emotions I kept bottled up for the past 22 years were about to be unleashed. Laura replied, Chris, you've been gone without a trace for 22 years, and now you somehow managed to make it to Canada and get adopted by this Johnson family? We all thought you were dead. Do you have any idea how he felt? You really think I did all that on my own? No, guys. My adopted grandfather helped me. After I ran away, I met the Johnsons, told them everything, and guess what? They didn't judge me and took me in as their own. Turns out my grandfather is a higher up from the UF, and after buying a new phone, he agreed to help me since I made it clear I never wanted to go back. and he was quite angry at the UF for doing something like this. So he arranged for the Johnsons to take me in and help me get a new identity, and they helped deal with my depression. I actually managed to get a job as a martial arts trainer. It's a moderate success in Canada, enough to pay the bills anyway. I couldn't believe my ears. All this time, the UF had helped us search and appeared to be grieving with us. Us, one had secretly known Chris's whereabouts and kept all of us in the dark. What about us, Chris? Listen, we love you, Chris. Me, Laura, and Adder have for years. At first, we didn't, since most of us couldn't stand you for a while. Look, in this story, while Yuki did want to help Chris, she was pretty shy about it. Because remember, she was undercover at Ironjaw and the humans made her uncomfortable. Figure I may add some of that in here. Actually, it's probably non canon anyway, whatever. Anyway, at first we didn't because most of us couldn't stand you for a while. Stand you. But after a while, we realized we had feelings for you. I didn't know the three of us could deal with it, especially Laura and Adder. I was hoping I would confess to you, but then your Cerberus agent secret got out, and we let our emotions cloud our judgment. We should have remembered that you had no choice to be a part of the war, but we didn't, and it cost us big. We tried to move on from dating others, even marrying them, but it didn't work because you're our one true love. I even told Laura and Adder, and we agreed that we would share you. And now, here we are. Hell, even Alex, Roxy, Riley, and Sasha came here because they wanted to apologize to you for what they did and hope to be friends with you. So, what do you say? Yuki said. I won't lie. I didn't expect that from you. I actually considered confessing my feelings for you girls, but thanks to Amber and the rest of you, you, whatever feelings I had were gone forever. I moved on from you all, and I met someone else eventually. He showed us the wedding ring in his right hand. She's an anthro. I told her everything, and she didn't discriminate against me. She loved and cared for me, unlike you. Besides, I've been keeping an eye on all of you, at least enough to know that you are all doing fine without me. You don't need me anymore, Yuki, and I don't need you girls. So let's just pretend this meeting never happened and we each go on our own separate ways again. He spoke in a perfectly calm voice. No sign of relief to finally see us again, or anger for what happened in the past. Nothing, just complete apathy. In a way, that was even worse than an outburst, or even worse than death itself. He was about to turn around when Lara snapped. What do you mean we don't need you? Of course we need you, Chris. Yuki, Adder, Lupa, Chloe, me. We're all worried sick about you, even after all these years, and you have no idea how sorry we are for what we did to you. We love you, and we'll go to hell and back to help you, just like you did for us. Surely somewhere deep down you must care about us, or else you wouldn't have come here. No, he answered. I came here for the humans who died. They were the only true family I had, and they're gone thanks to the UF and FIA. But now they can rest in peace. I know you're hoping for me to forgive you, to accept your apology and feelings, but it's too late for that. Nor do you have to fear an angry rant from me. Because the truth is, Laura, is that I don't feel anything toward you guys anymore. No hate, but no love either. Just nothing. Those words hit us harder than I ever thought possible. In a fit of rage, Amber and Mika grabbed him by the shoulders, just as like they tended to do. in the past, when, forgetting that he was now bigger and no doubt stronger than before, Chris easily pulled himself free and swept their legs with such force that they lost balance and fell to the ground. I was so surprised I dropped the phone. He picked it up before I could and glared down at them. I am no longer the little boy you can just boss around, Amber Hellfire and Mika Blackclaw. He spoke as he raised his hand, as if he prepared to smash my phone, but he never did. Instead, he sighed and handed the phone back to me. I guess if you want to tell your soldiers about this, I can't stop you, but I strongly suggest you don't do it, if you want to save them the disappointment. Oh, and speaking of the aforementioned anthros you brought with you, they can go to hell forever for all I care. Face it, Lynn. Chris is dead. There is only me now. That was the last thing he said. He got into his car and drove off, leaving us behind, never to return. I just stood there on the pavement while with the others until Amber and Mika picked themselves up and joined us. All these years I had tried to stay strong for my troops, but that moment there was no longer holding back the tears. So I cried for at least half an hour. The others joined in to grieve with us. For the man who motivated us to establish peace between our races, we had finally found, only to immediately lose him again. That was 5 years ago. We decided that Chris was a lost cause, and there would be no point in trying to get him to come back to us. I wasn't too surprised. At this point, Chris had spent a larger part of his life living without us than with us, and the years away from the UF and FIA only fed his anger and eventual apathy towards us. Besides, we had already tainted the image of the UF after the public found out we were indirectly killing humans by giving them to the FIA, only to be raped, tortured, and eaten alive. It was better not to taint our image any further. The only thing we could do was offer the UF some sort of closure. It wasn't easy, but we managed to convince everyone that the chances of Chris ever being found alive were practically non existent, and it would be best to close this dark chapter in our lives forever. So we organized a symbolic wake for him in a secret location. It was a private gathering, only me, Alpha Squad, Alex, Roxy, Riley, and Sash, uh, but none of our parents, none of our husbands and children, none of our families, for that matter. All of us shared our best memories about him and said our goodbyes. That was the last time the whole team had been together. Till tomorrow, that is. We're still the only ones who know the truth about Chris, and it's a heavy burden carry for we'll have to carry for the rest of our lives, for the sake of our friends and families. I put the picture back up in the drawer I took it from. Hopefully, I'll be able to sleep a little. We have to move on, and tomorrow is another day, a happy day. Goodbye, Chris, or Tyler, or whatever name you're using now, and whatever you are, I hope you're truly happy. Yeah, I kind of based this short story based on this one Loud House fan fiction I read called Long Lost Loud. And like I said before in my last two stories, if you're if you're thinking I'm gonna be posting this on any fan fiction websites, think again. Because unless I get permission from Gilly Camo to do so, I can't do anything. And this is as close as you're gonna get to reading it online. Plus, this is my trifecta. Yep, my three short stories based on one of the awesomest stories I ever read in my entire life. After this, just gonna move on from this and move on to something else. Maybe write another different story based on like Mario, Sonic, The Walking Dead, or whatever. Anyway, hope you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a nice day.